Yeah, basically my role for next year, I'm going to be the VP of Tech, so I'm going to handle all the kind of techie stuff that's like behind the scenes techie stuff, not like, you know, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, who else?
Cool. Hi everybody, I'm Diana. I am the board-elect for VP of Events. Hell yeah. I will just be planning a whole bunch of fun events for the cohort and for the people who were recently on the cohort and then like kind of finish their time in Open Alpha. Yeah, it'll just be a fun time. I just get to make sure people have fun. Honestly, the best job, like if you ask me. But,
Alright, hello everybody. I am taking over Alicia's job as the VP of Marketing, so I will be spamming all of your Instagram feeds all the time next year.
Great.
Hi, I'm Kaya. I'm a freshman in CSDM, and next year I will be the VP of Finance.
Beautiful. Alright, that's the new board.
Alright, awesome, thank you very much. And now we are up, so we can get going.
Cool.
Which is, if it will go up, yeah? Is it?
No. No.
If you'd like.
Yeah, try that. Yeah?
This is a really good trailer.
We're doing great.
Yeah,
This
we're doing
is
great.
lovely. Actually,
See, normally we do this in either SCI or SCA, and you would think that the setups would be the same across all of the SCA
would you like the
buildings.
distraction to continue?
You would think they would be the
I
same.
don't know, man.
to just talk about
It's
the
in-
characters, Helen?
I don't know what this is. Here, wait, if someone else is
So this was the first character we designed. It took us, yeah, it took us 5 design meetings. 5 months.
Under the water theme?
Yeah, it's like
We need it.
Our scope's really small. The scope is small.
oh my god!
We have audio? There we go. I know that. Owen to the rescue. Thank you, Owen. Okay, please get back. Alright, so now we'll be doing Leads Q&A followed by gameplay demo because I'm going to give them as much time as I possibly can. So with that being said, can we go down the line? Some of you already introduced yourselves a little bit,
we can do it
but
again.
just introduce just your name, what team you led, and yeah, that should be good.
Great. I am Ashley. I was one of the co-leads for the design team.
I'm Casey. I am the other co-lead of the design team. I'm Haley, and I was the lead for the art team.
I'm Diana, and I was the lead for the programming team. I'm Gia, and I was the lead for the sound team.
I am Ryan, and I was the lead for the playtesting team.
Awesome. So if you, let's go down the line. Let's do that. It'll be easier. Partially because design was a huge part of this game. So let's talk design first. So I already kind of mentioned the original premise of the game being kind of the Costco Papers, Please idea. How did that evolve over the design process and all of your meetings and meeting with the team and everything?
I would say the main evolution we thought it was going to be mainly like stressful Papa's Pizzeria, like keep it going kind of game, and it kind of evolved into a very story-based game that's very heavy on dialogue. So yeah, really encouraging anyone who plays the game to pay attention to the dialogue because it took a lot of work to make the interlocking storylines, and yeah, the items are tied to their stories too, so.
One of the things that we had established pretty solidly initially was that we wanted it to be a pretty lighthearted game. We didn't want it to, like, Papers, Please is a very, like, I've never played it, but it's more, like, of a serious game as I understand it, and, like, taking a lot more critical, like, thought. And we didn't want this to necessarily be, like, free-floating whatever, but we did want it to have, like, the feeling of lightheartedness where you met comedic characters and we're just kind of having a very fun, casual time. And that was one of our big things that we continuously considered throughout the process. Like, one of the things we talked about early was adding a time pressure mechanic, like how much do we want to pressure people to finish this game as fast as possible, and eventually kind of decided that was going against our idea of trying to have it be this more lighthearted game, so we actually ended up pretty much removing the time component in service of the goal of having it be more lighthearted and comedic.
Awesome. What was the most interesting or unique design decision that you or someone
I
else
know
on the
you
team
want to
made?
take that one.
Okay.
Alright, well, okay, so everyone gets tempted to press like a big red button no matter what the circumstances are, and there is a big red button in this game that you press to arrest any robbers that may waltz into the store. And I think the best mechanic is the fact that you can press this button on customers that actually aren't doing anything wrong, and they will get taken away and hold a grudge against you the next time you see them. They will be like, what the hell? So I think that's the best mechanic of the game.
Do you have any ideas, or are we just gonna go with that?
No, honestly, that's a pretty entertaining one. I think I really enjoy the branching dialogue system because there's a lot of really weird, cool facets of it. Like, characters very much do react story-wise to the choices you're making, and I think that's pretty fun.
Are there any particular lessons that you guys learned out of being design leads for the first time?
I mean, how to make spreadsheets. That was something that I learned.
Ashley made a mean spreadsheet. We got a gorgeous one.
Yeah, I had never made a spreadsheet, so that went pretty well. I don't know. Do you have anything that particularly comes to mind?
Everything always takes longer than you think it's going
Yeah.
to take. We'd make an agenda for the meeting, and I'd be like, yeah, we got 3 things on this thing, and then we're 45 minutes in, we've maybe finished item 1, and I'm like, oh, right. We're maybe going to reconsider how much time some of this stuff takes. But
Yeah.
we got there. I think by the end we started figuring out the balance a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I'd say I also learned, like, going in to be design lead, I was like, oh my god, I can't wait to make this such a narrative game, because I am a narrative studies major.
Both
I was
of
like,
you
oh my
are.
god, yeah,
That's
so
so
we were like,
good.
this is going to be such a story-based game, but I realized how important it is to consider the mechanics as well, and, yeah, whether I liked it or not, I really had to think about, like, the programming aspects and, like, the actual player experience over just the narrative, so, yeah.
And I think the one other thing was this is the first game that we've had, like, 3D be part of it, and a lot of us, especially the two of us, because we're not super experienced with animation or programming, it was a lot of like, hey, we have this idea, is this a thing you can do? Because we have no idea. And I think initially we didn't know what the right things to ask about were, and it was a little bit of a learning curve in terms of like, where do we ask Diana and Haley what they can do? Who knows, like, what the actual scope of the game is? And we definitely, it was a little bit of a learning curve to figure that one out early on, but we got there.
Yeah,
there.
no, definitely. I'd say that I learned that I might want to start learning how to code whether I like it or
Yep,
not.
me too. Honestly, I think we just
Yeah.
base level understand.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, good. Were there any, like, things that you really, really wanted in the game, or somebody on the team really wanted in the game that ended up having to get cut? Just, this is your time. So
I had a variety of interesting ideas that did not make it in, but my favorite one was that the customers would steal, but like keep the item on their body somewhere, so it would be like under their hat or like in their sleeve or something, and it would be like painfully obvious. And that didn't make it in. And then also there was this feature that we wanted to have where people would like rush the door to like try and steal, and you'd have to catch them. But we ended up kind of making it a lot easier to, like, way too easy to see them stealing, so.
Yeah, instead we have this robber that travels excruciatingly slowly through the background.
Yeah.
I find it incredibly entertaining.
Yeah, so yeah, we kind of kept that in, but I think we were gonna have a lot more stealing involved in the game, and we just didn't. We were like, we'll make them good
I mean,
citizens.
time is a big consideration when you have one semester and it's a volunteer project. And it's not that like we ended up deciding like not to put as much time and effort into it. It's that we ended up reconcentrating a lot of that time and effort and making sure other things got polished. Yeah. Awesome. And you mentioned earlier about the branching dialogue and stuff. Were there any particular challenges that you had while you were writing this branching dialogue and like making it all cohesive and everything?
Okay, yes, my apologies to the one poor programmer who had to reformat all of the dialogue because I did something and I don't know what I did, but I did not do it right. But one of probably the hardest things was that we have a lot of interlocking storylines, and one of the things we did is we had so many people interested in writing that we have 10 characters, so we ended up pretty much assigning one writer per character, and that worked well. We got there in the end, but it did mean that like if people had overlapping storylines, they needed to be talking a whole lot to make sure that those storylines ended up in alignment. So we had this one really lovely design meeting where we all sat down and we went into our little groups of like people that we know storyline overlap and just read each other's, make sure it works, do some edits based on yours. And I think the branching, it's in there. There's branching dialogue. It matches up timeline-wise. It's great. We got there.
Yeah, no, and I think that like trying to make all of those interlocking stories and then somehow finding a way to inform every person who was writing that this was going on, like that was a lot to tackle. And we had this like tactic where we wrote all the characters' names and then we just drew like lines, like it kind of looked like
there's a nice mind map with just lines between the characters, and then there'd be other challenges, like maybe we wanted the character to give a certain kind of response if you get the item wrong, but if you only get that piece of information if the player makes a mistake, you have to figure out another way to get it to them if they get it right, if it's an essential part of the narrative. And that feels pretty intuitive, like that makes sense saying it aloud, but when you're writing the dialogue, I promise it's not as intuitive as it seems.
Yeah, and on the topic of dialogue, I've always been someone who, like, when I play games, like, I skip the dialogue. Like, I'm like, I don't really care, I just want to play the games. I know. But I learned to have a deeper appreciation for all the people writing those side quests, writing all of those things that you just skip through and do. Like, now I might start reading the dialogue when I play a game because I saw how much work goes into writing it.
But I think more than anything, the branching dialogue system is a shout out to everyone who worked on writing.
Yeah.
Because y'all are the real ones. Nice job, team.
Yeah.
And thank you, design. Yeah, appreciate you. And design is a huge workload to have. It is the main driving force in our game, especially because we don't have the creative production or direction. So really extra appreciate you all. Let's go to art. Haley, who is a what major?
Cognitive science major.
Yeah. Because she can do everything. Fun fact, Haley has been on literally all of our teams, except for programming. But all of them at different times. So this semester we went into some 3/, I guess some 2.5D because we had that, some 2D assets in the background with the characters and everything. So what made you choose originally to kind of start going that way?
We had, as you know, for the first time we had 3D assets in our game. And it was, from the beginning, we were all kind of generally collectively interested in going in that direction. But I wanted to know, how much of our team was actually, interested and experienced in 3D. So I originally, put out a Google form to the team, and I was like, hey, fill this out, scale of 1 to 5, how comfortable are you with, 3D? It ended up being pretty evenly split. So we had one of our first art meetings, and we just talked about it, and that's when we decided we would just kind of do a balance, because there were some people who were really comfortable with 2D and had no experience with 3D, like me,
And there were some people who were more comfortable with 3D but didn't really have as much experience with 2D. So I wanted to be able to have a process where everybody could contribute, so that's what we ended up doing.
Nice. Did you have any particularly funny moments when you were making any of the 3D assets or communicating with any other artists?
Oh.
Or interesting, or any standout moments, basically?
Let's see. I don't know if this is funny, but I just had trouble with like we made like a knockoff Jack Daniels. We called it Max Daniels after one of our members. And there was something about like I textured the model in Paint 3D, and then somehow I couldn't get the texture off of it because it had like the lettering was also 3D for some reason. I couldn't figure out how to like put it flat on there, and so then I took the original model. I took it into let's see. I tried different things. I tried taking it into Blender and getting the texture off of that, and that kind of worked. I ended up taking it into Procreate, like exporting a file from Blender, taking it into Procreate, retexturing it, and then it had like a bunch of different files, but we eventually figured it out, and it's in the game.
Now we have Max Daniels.
Yes.
yes. As our one in which you need to ID your characters for. And what was it like working with other artists, especially because everybody has, all these different experiences, everybody has different styles, like having that cohesion, how did you get everybody together to do that?
Yeah, I know there was definitely some discussion about like style, especially with the characters. I ended up putting out like a little style guide, or what we did first was we went on Pinterest and like sort of ideated with just for inspiration, which we usually do. And we decided on like the kind of simplistic style for the characters. So later in the process, I put out like a little style guide, like this kind of color palette. We ended up like color picking from an image, or a color palette we used for inspiration. We color picked from an image from Subway Surfers. I just thought that was funny. And yeah, it was like 5-point black line art and like less detail in the characters, used the warmer color palette. So I tried kind of like streamlining it, I don't know if that's the right word, but like to where people could still make the characters with personality, just in a way that's like a little more cohesive. And I think it turned out really well.
And in general, did you have any like overall overarching aesthetic goals that you wanted to get done with like that color palette or with the 2D, 3D?
Yeah, I ended up looking a lot at like shape language, which I had been learning about at the time, and I'm still learning about. I definitely I talked about this with the team, and I definitely like the idea of having like softer, rounder, more general shapes and like less detail with the warmer color palette for like a friendly, softer kind of feeling. And I did learn a lot about like how that comes through in the game. Shoot, did I answer the question?
Yeah, no, that's
okay.
Perfect. Awesome. And thank you, Art. Thank you, Haley. And thank you, everybody who contributed to Art. Doing 3D for the first time is big and scary, and a lot of people did their first 3D assets, textures, all that fun stuff this semester. So
including me.
Really appreciate all of you,
lead.
including Haley did her first. Very exciting. Miss Diana, programming. So let's talk. I have a lot of questions for you.
Okay.
You are me, therefore I know how to talk to you. Yes. So how many people contributed to the programming team this semester, and how did you manage a team of that size?
I think we had 16 people on programming, with all like varying levels of experience. Like some people had never coded before, and some people were like pretty experienced. And so it was just kind of balancing, like pairing people together, like with experienced people and then the newer people, and just making sure that everybody was able to figure out their tasks, and then also just slacking it if we needed help.
Was there a particular, you mentioned it a little bit with the pairing stuff, but a particular system in which we used to...
Trying to get at Slack?
I'm trying to get at paired programming here.
Oh yeah, programming pairs. Yeah.
Talk about it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what we do is we have programming pairs, so the new people get paired up with somebody who's like more experienced, and then they kind of work together on their tasks to make sure that they can get it done, and then the newer people are getting experience so that they can then become the leaders in the programming pair, and that's how we do all of our tasks until the end, where we just kind of take them as we go, because by that point, a lot of people are very experienced.
Nice. Were there any obstacles or roadblocks that you guys hit along the way that ended up having to be troubleshooted?
Yes. Apparently, it's actually really difficult to drag an item in Unity. Did not know that was a thing. But we watched lots of old men on YouTube trying to explain how you drag an item in Unity. We eventually got it figured out, but it took like, I want to say like 3 weeks of like just recycling the task over and over again, because like it was just so hard to figure out. But we eventually got it.
Nice.
And now you can drag the items. You should go play the game just to drag the items.
Just to
That's
drag it, because it took 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Was it difficult on that note to manage both the 2D and the 3D aspects that we had, and getting those assets in and getting them draggable and certain things that you might overlook?
Yeah, because that's what we said. It's like, this is our first 3D game that we've ever done, and so no one, I mean, people had experience programming in 3D, but not like, if you've just programmed in Unity in C# for the club. We've never tried anything like this before, so it was a lot of old men on YouTube getting us through, a lot of just like looking up how to do things if we didn't know how. Lots of DMing randomly at like 4 a.m. being like, help, I'm so lost. But I think it got better as the semester went on, and then we figured it out.
Were there any particularly frustrating and or funny bugs that came up?
Funny bugs. There is one funny bug that I discovered you can actually win the game just by arresting every single customer that comes into frame. Like the minute they get in, don't let them say hi, just like grab them and take them away. you win the game. You can't do that anymore. That is fixed now. But that was masterfully funny, because I'm imagining just like walking into your job and just like calling the cops on everyone who comes up, like, nope, don't want to talk to you, then you get paid. So yeah.
And then you get your paycheck.
And you get your paycheck.
Yeah, love that. And how did you keep everybody engaged and doing meaningful work throughout it? Because it is difficult to kind of balance those different skill levels and the differences in like people working together and things like that.
No, that's true. I think in the beginning, if anybody playtested in the beginning stages, you may have noticed like Big Bird and like like Elmo, or like just some weird characters in there.
We
and
had
I
a
think
pig for a while as a
Yeah.
customer before we got smart in there.
Yeah, and it was just like random things that people kind of just threw in there as like temporary things, but the reason that it was so like crucial to the game was it was like fun. It was a fun thing for people to do, and I think as we got like the art in there and all the cool, like, it's a funny game. Like at the end of the day, it's like kind of a comedy game, and so I think that really got people engaged, because it was like every task we were working on made the game funnier, and I would just sit there and like laugh am I allowed to swear?
Yes.
Laugh my ass off as I was playing it. So it was fun, even though it was just like every single task was just making the game better, I think.
Awesome. Thank you, programming. Thank you, Diana. And on to Miss Gia Lang. CS Games?
Yes.
Beautiful. I'm also mentioning majors as I go down if I remember them. You are CS, soon to be CSBA, and I hate you for it.
Actually, now CSBA. It's official. So sorry.
Diana is CSBA. Anyways, Gia, sound team. How many people contributed to that?
Yeah, there was about 6 people who composed the actual tracks that are up on right now, and then there were, I would say, 3 or 4 other people that contributed to like the sound effects in the game.
Nice. And what resources, software, hardware did you guys use for sound?
For the most part, mostly everyone worked on Ableton specifically, just like the live like demo version, which is actually an insane testament to like how good the sound team is at producing, because we were able to do it on such limited hardware. Besides Ableton, I personally use FL Studio a little bit more, which is contested. And then for sound effects, just like Audacity in general, like kind of just sound editors, basic recorders like that. And then I believe Casey for some of the voice kind of sound effects used like a recorder.
Oh yeah, they had
Yeah, they had a recorder. And what were some of your goals going into leading the sound team and getting a cohesive sound? And what did you really want out of the soundtrack for this semester?
Well, from the minute I heard Costco, I just immediately had just this kind of theme of jazz, bossa nova, and just like kind of like things you just hear on like the intercom, and just kind of like a like almost like not eerie, but like, you know, it's like jazz and then it's kind of like a bit strange, just very grocery store, whatever you think, like that kind of thing. And so that was kind of the initial idea, and then we all the sound team started going to meetings, and we started kind of getting a bit more of the vibe from the narrative or design team, and then we kind of started refining that a bit more into more of the jazzy elements, and then yeah, so we just kind of wanted it to be a very upbeat and like pleasant track for like the more pleasant game that we decided to go with.
Awesome. And did you or anybody on your team get to compose anything that you thought was particularly like on theme, or you particularly enjoyed, or maybe if you don't want to out a single track, just talk about the tracks in general?
Well, I would say I'm especially proud of the new sound team members. I would say that was our biggest success this semester, was getting people who had been saying like, oh, I want to be a part of sound, but I have no idea, like I don't know music theory, and I don't know like what Ableton is or how to use it. So getting people accustomed to that was the biggest success. And so towards the end of the semester, we finally got the new sound members, Clement and Charlie, to make 2 full tracks, and they're such good songs, and I love them. And like it was just my favorite thing to hear those at the end, and it was just like the final like pieces that like tied the whole track together, and I just like love those songs. So yeah.
Sound effects wise, transitioning a little bit, did you guys do anything particularly, because I know that last semester we had the whole going to Griffith Park to do the cricket sound effects. Did we have anything that was particularly fun or out there for the sound effect recordings?
Yes, there was actually one night where it was like 20 minutes before all of the stores in the village closed, and I was like, Ashley, you wanna help me out with some sound effects? And so we ended up going at like 9:40 to Target and just like clanking salsa jars together and like rustling chips in front of like all of the employees that were trying to close things down. And I think
We couldn't use anything because you were laughing and all of that. It was like really like there's something just so eerily funny about like tapping a glass jar against a wall when you're like losing your mind halfway through the week and you're about to close. Like it was just so funny for no reason. Like I don't know.
I ended up like buying things just to get like the scanner sound.
Did you use that?
Did you use any of them?
I think we did use a couple of those, yeah.
Really? I didn't even know that.
And
wow.
So I would say that was a pretty iconic sound effect moment.
I love that. I love that. And in general, I don't know if you have worked in other types of mediums besides games, but how is composing for games different than, you know, for other maybe non-interactive mediums?
I would say the biggest thing is that you never know how someone's gonna play a game, so like the music has to be able to translate in all circumstances, because you know, I would say like, you know, composing for film, you know exactly what's gonna happen, you know all of the editing sequences, and people are just going to watch, and that's a very like constructed journey that you take sonically. So, you know, for a game, it's really important to make sure that it like really both ties in like all of the actual interactive elements, and then also just sound effects in general are really important to like good like game feel, for lack of better words. So yeah.
Awesome. And shameless plug, will the original soundtrack of Check It Out be released anywhere?
It will be released on all platforms, including Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud.
Yeah?
You can also play it on TikTok if you would like to make some fun little TikTok dances.
It is released
together.
anywhere that you could possibly think of it being released, I believe. Yeah, looking at you. So go give us a stream. Very exciting. Thank you, Sound. Thank you, Gia. And on to Ryan. CS game? CS. CS. Beautiful. Brian was our playtesting lead. And this semester we did things a little bit differently with playtesting, so I'm gonna ask you, what kinds of playtesting did we do this semester with Check It Out, and what were kind of like the mediums that we did for this?
So this semester we did a mix of internal and external playtesting. And so basically, for those who want to learn, playtesting is basically having other people play the game and taking the feedback that we get to find like ways to improve the game or to address any bugs that need to be fixed or issues that also need to be addressed. And so for internal playtesting, what we did is we had the members of the club play the game during every other meeting once we had developed a minimum viable product. And that's kind of interesting because in the past when we did playtesting last semester, we just had like 2 events where like anyone could play who was on our mailing list. And another thing that I'd like to also add is when a lot of people who aren't on the programming team or aren't on the design team may not have seen the game at like certain points of progress. So being able to do the internal playtesting like that at a regular time give everyone an opportunity to see the game. And as for external playtesting, it was something that we did with all of our members would talk to their friends and family and get them to do a playtest with them.
Yeah, so in the past we've done general, like, big external playtesting events that we've done usually over Zoom, but this semester we kind of did it on a very individual level with friends and family, and it seemed to work pretty well, so we'll keep that up probably. I don't know, new board, take it over. And you mentioned that we have a difference in internal and external playtests. How did that change the feedback that was received?
I think the best way to think about it is for external playtests, people who are playtesting don't benefit from having the prior knowledge of what the objective is, what situation you're being put in the game. And that's especially funny when we didn't have as much like put in the game yet. At the very start, when it was just like a conveyor belt and like white boxes, like people had no idea where they were, what they were doing, and what the goal was. And so that drastically changed like the feedback that we got. It was often, and then once we were able to give them like subtle hints on like what they are supposed to do, because they don't have an idea of what we are trying to do, they often end up with ideas of what they wanted it to look like. Whereas for people who do have an understanding of what we're trying to do, they often find looking to look at us. They often have ideas that are more based on how you can improve what already exists.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And was there any particularly funny, or I keep talking back to the funny because our game is rather comedic, might as well keep this Q&A comedic. Were there any funny bugs or playtesting feedback that you got back?
I think the one that comes to mind is a couple of weeks ago when we added the art assets. I think when you clicked the carrot, I think anytime you clicked the carrot, it would just freeze the entire game.
The carrot in particular.
And you couldn't do anything, and like all the interactable objects except for the panic button wouldn't work. And it's so crazy. I don't know why it was just the carrot.
So if you click a carrot, you can only arrest people.
Yes,
Great.
only arrest
Silly
people.
panic.
But the other, actually, now that I
We
think
should
about
have
it,
that mechanic, yeah.
the apple was another one that every now and then the apple would, if you click the apple, sometimes it would cause the same issue. So we had a joke that our game just hates fruits and veggies.
And how did you work to get all of this feedback given to all of the other leads and the other teams to get them to integrate it back in?
Okay, so I think this relates kind of to how we did playtesting. So this is something that we kept like ultra playtesting, where we have people fill out a feedback form, the people who are conducting the playtest and the people who are doing the playtest. And so people who are conducting the playtest have a spreadsheet where they fill in the issue that they want that the playtest to comments about. Like, oh man, like this is it would be nice if we had like a timer or something. And then a proposed solution at a timer, and then the team that follows it, which allows like teams to know what they need to address and what issues they need to deal with. And then at the end, and then every week before meeting we had a leads meeting, and it was at that time that I was able to talk to leads about what they needed to do with a more concise list.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ryan. And last but not least with our little leads Q&A, we're just gonna go down the line and answer either or both of the questions of just something that you learned this semester from being a lead, and maybe your favorite part of being a lead. So, do you want to start?
Oh, okay, yeah. Something we learned and then...
Something you learned, favorite part.
Something I learned, I think I already kind of briefly talked about this, but being in the position of being a lead, you really kind of have to focus on more than just what you particularly like doing. Like, I like writing, I like the narrative aspect, but I really had to focus in on mechanics as well and like the actual player experience. Yeah, and then what was the other
Favorite?
Favorite part? I enjoyed the illustrations that we would make at leads meetings because we would quickly need to describe something, and then I've drawn a horse. I drew.
It was not a horse.
It was really good. I
You
drew
should've
like
put that in the game.
a little guy with like a can of soup on his head. I liked that. Yeah, the art aspect of being a design lead was the best part.
Okay, that really rough sketch of what the game screen looks like that we would do every meeting. We have that
You
down
were
to
an
the
expert.
science.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember exactly.
Something that you learned and your favorite
Something
part.
that I learned. Communication's really hard, and I realized that is like kind of a lesson that you could take away from many things, or that you could learn multiple times. But I think it was emphasized to me how much, especially communication between the 6 of us, mattered this semester, because we are dealing with 3D and there's a lot of programming stuff going on, and I don't know a ton about programming, and so making sure, or at least making a very sincere effort to keep other people updated was a big lesson this semester. And I think leads meeting, as soon as we had that established as like, okay, this is just happening, that was really helpful. It was a good like reminder that, hey, like as much as you put in the effort to communicate, sometimes having an established time where you are going to be communicating is a really helpful thing. And I don't know, I think it was good.
And your favorite part?
Of being a leader of the game.
Either?
Okay. I'm just saying
Or
this
both.
because I think it's funny. There are a bunch of characters, obviously, and we don't have the lines voiceovered, but we do have some sound effects that are made by the NPCs when they walk in, and we decided on this.
Love it.
Justin, can we hear yours?
Yeah, can you do your sound?
Yeah, Justin, can you do
Mine?
Yeah.
This is Chad,
Shouldn't we
guys.
leave it? We should leave it for the recording or for the gameplay, shouldn't we?
You don't want it.
Maybe?
We'll do some live voice acting. Don't worry.
Yeah, we'll do some afterwards maybe.
Do some afterwards.
That was pretty entertaining. I enjoyed the little.
Actually, if you bring up the meeting
recording
13 slides, it's on the sound slide.
Dude, we'll just play the game. We're gonna play the game in like 3 minutes.
Okay,
It's
fine.
fine.
Fine. I learned a lot of things this semester. I learned how to use Blender sort of in a very basic way. I learned that there's a difference between like FBX, OBJ, GLB. I don't know the difference, but there is a difference. I also learned how to like depend on other people because I had to, because I didn't know how to 3D model. I just by default I had to delegate tasks to people and be like, hey, can you model this? Can you model that? And like, can you texture this? Can you do these characters? Because usually I kind of like to hoard the tasks. So yeah, I learned a lot about delegating and depending on other people, which was very cool. My favorite part, I guess my favorite part was just like, as a team, having all that control over what the game looks like. Like everything, or you know, a lot of things that you see when you look at the game are like because of the art team, and that was really cool. And yeah, also making characters. Well, that's just my favorite part, is being in art. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Diana?
Yes. I learned that a lot of our cohort has very wonky sleep schedules. I would get a message at like 4 a.m. someone being like, hey, just put this task in. And I'd be like, all right. Well, I also have a wonky sleep schedule. So then I would respond like right away. Be like, oh, I'll merge it. But I also learned that it's very difficult to manage programmers because you have to like do it in a certain order. You have to get the task in before somebody starts the next task, otherwise it's going to build up and it's going to just not turn out good. So it's kind of like a 24/7 job, like 24/7, always being on Slack, waiting for someone to message that I can like merge it in. So that was something that was interesting to figure out, but it was also kind of fun just to see the game come together. And then my favorite thing, probably seeing the game come together, because I wasn't in art, I wasn't in design, and I didn't know what was like going on with the narrative side, and I didn't know what was going on with like what the art looked like. So then they'd just be like, okay, put this in the game, and I was like, okay, and then I put it in the game, and I was like, wait a minute, this is cool. And it was just like literally like a week ago, maybe less, when I like actually played through the entire game and saw all the dialogue, and I was like, wait, this is so funny. But I just realized it because I didn't ever like look at it. I was just putting it in the game.
Yeah.
So that was really cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Diana. Gia?
Yeah, so something I definitely learned was, well, one, I had to brush up on very rudimentary music theory. I am definitely not well versed in music theory. I kind of just like jumped into like, oh, I want to make music, so that was kind of a thing I kind of just started doing. So, but in order to be able to like teach people who are newer to like digital audio workstations, how to like produce music, you kind of like have to have a foundation. So it was cool to be able to learn at least a little bit of that and like improve myself a little bit. And then also just working in a team on music, that was definitely something new to me because it was more of like a side hobby that I just started right before going to college. And then yeah, so like actually like being in a group setting where everyone is like making music together was really cool. And then favorite thing about being a lead, I guess, was just like hearing all of the sounds come together with like every new meeting someone brought a new like little piece of music or a little composition, and just like hearing that come together was really cool.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Thanks, Jeff. And Ryan?
Yeah. So first of all, I actually didn't know anything about playtesting when I started. So I knew that I had to give a presentation on how to playtest. And I spent like, I just looked up how to playtest. And I read the first like 10 links and I was like, okay. And they all repeated a lot of the same stuff, and I was like, okay, I got a guide now. And then I improved the presentation and I gave it, and I recorded the presentation so that we can use it for the future generations. Yeah, so that was the like tangible things I learned. But I think part of being a playtesting lead was I had to do a lot of the organization, because you have to keep all of the feedback in like a related spreadsheet. And I had no idea that you could like put several sections of a spreadsheet and then add them all together in like one single spreadsheet. So I had to, as a more general thing that I learned, it's like how to like work with people and like how to also keep a lot of things like organized.
Yeah, your favorite part?
My favorite part of being lead is, I think, it gave me an opportunity to talk to everyone about ideas that they had. And I think that a lot of people wouldn't have given some of the ideas that they do have unless they put it to the design team, or unless they're given a tangible opportunity to say like, oh wow, like I think that we could add this. And so it was cool to see that, especially with like other members of the team who do have the opportunity available to them, but may not take it on their own.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. And with all that of all of our leads talking, I believe we can now have a little teaser of the game. Diana, you want to come play?
Alrighty.
Then all y'all can
Pro
turn
gamer.
around and get
That's
on
another
radio.
fun little joke that we do. Perfect. But yeah, that is it for Check It Out's release demo. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I really appreciate it. And I hope that you download it on Steam. It is available as of literally right at this moment. So thank you so much for coming, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.